Hello, I'm Dr. John Kruse, and today I'm going to be talking about the importance of the concept of a rate-limiting step and why this may affect more the duration than the size of the impact of certain medications, and also why certain dietary changes may not result in simple changes in brain biochemistry. So the takeaway message is that understanding what the rate-limiting step is in a process, again, can help you understand why, with particularly the drugs I'll talk about, Vyvanse and Jornay, going higher above a certain level may actually do more to extend the duration of their action rather than boost the strength of the effect, and why simply eating more food with tryptophan in it may not help much with producing serotonin in your brain. So, to jump into it, what is the rate-limiting step? So the rate-limiting step is a term originally from chemistry. It's also used in manufacturing, and that's saying if you have a multi-step sequential process, the rate-limiting step is the slowest step in that process, and it's the one that determines the rate of output for the whole system. So I'm going to use an analogy to hopefully explain things in more detail and more clarity. So say we have an assembly line making rag dolls. At the front of the line, we have a supply of rag doll torso and heads, and the very first worker on the assembly line is going to take 2 minutes, and so on the left arm. Doll with the left arm goes down the assembly line. The next worker takes 2 minutes, sews on the right arm. Third worker sews on the left arm, takes 2 minutes for that. The next worker takes 2 minutes to sew on the right leg. The next worker has a more intricate job of sewing in the button eyes and putting on a happy face on the doll, and that sewing takes 6 minutes. That's going to be our rate-limiting step. And then the next worker sews in a mop of hair, takes about 2 minutes for that. The next worker puts on a little shirt and dress, or shirt and pants for the doll. That takes about 2 minutes. And then the final 8th worker puts the doll in a box ready for shipping and handling. So that's our silly prototypical assembly line with the rate-limiting step of the 6 minutes taken for putting the buttons in the face on. So our unsophisticated foreman comes by and he's saying, here, we have all these 2-minute steps to sew on the left arm, sew on the right arm, sew on the legs, sew on the hairs. I'm going to increase the efficiency of this joint, and instead of sewing those on, we're going to be stapling those on. But we can't really put staples across the face, so we're still going to have the face being sewed on. So, and I'm going to shave, instead of 2 minutes, it's only going to take 30 seconds to sew on each arm. So we're going to be cutting 3/4 of the time of your manufacturing, and since these 2-minute steps of sewing on different limbs and the hair are 5/8, more than half your time in manufacturing, then we should be getting a lot more dolls made during the day. And the result of this intervention is the arms go on faster, the legs go on faster, and then there's a much bigger pile up waiting for the person who's going to do the face, because it's still taking them 6 minutes to sew the faces on. Then the people downstream aren't affected by that. So we're still only producing 6 minutes. It's the doll is the limiting factor, the rate-limiting step, so we're still only producing 10 dolls an hour. So at the end of the day, we haven't made any more, even though certainly more than half the steps of this process have improved. And again, it's because the rate-limiting step is going to determine not just what's going on in that step, but the whole system is dependent on that one. So to speed up the whole system, we have to speed up that rate-limiting step. So for example, if you've glue on the eyes and glue on the mouth, and that works in 2 minutes, then you actually have a nicely flowing assembly line that each stage costs. So in the original assembly line, we have a flow from one worker to the other, each taking 2 minutes, and what happens is we have a big pile up because the face sewer can't sew on faces quickly enough, and we have a backlog there. As soon as the faces are slapped on, we have a smoothly flowing line again with the hair and the dresses and the boxing going on. The only way to make things go through this assembly line faster again is to change that rate limiting step. So we could either hire 2 people and have them alternate, or 3 people, or 4, so that there are more people at that stage to speed the dolls through the, each one's taking more time on a face, but if we have 4 of them working together, each grabbing a doll that's coming back, then we will clear that backlog and have a smoothly flowing line and have a faster rate of production of dolls and more dolls at the end of the day. So I hope the general concept, I hope, is clear from there, that altering other parts of the manufacturing process are not going to have an impact on how quickly you are getting product through or how much is produced at the end of the day. So I'm going to switch over to why this is relevant or important for biochemistry and neurochemistry, and specifically certain drugs. And I talked about Vyvanse several weeks back. So Vyvanse is a stimulant medication. It's a form of dextroamphetamine that is chemically linked to the amino acid lysine. This drug it's a prodrug. It's not an active drug when those are linked together. You need to swallow the drug. It needs to be absorbed into your bloodstream. And once in your bloodstream, the red blood cells have an enzyme that cleave the lysine, the amino acid, away from the dextroamphetamine. The dextroamphetamine then is quickly absorbed into the brain and quickly goes to the dopamine transporter and other dopamine-oriented and vesicular transport systems in the brain to have its effect there, which is to produce greater and more immediate dopamine release. So the rate limiting step in the system is actually, there's a finite supply of those enzymes on the red blood cells to cleave the Vyvanse into the active part, so to release the dextroamphetamine molecule. Now, under most conditions, at low levels, the amount of red blood cells, the enzymes can handle the flow of what's ever being absorbed through the digestive system. It can cleave everything that's there. But if you rise to a certain level, then the importance of this rate limiting step comes to be. So if you get more Vyvanse, more lysine-linked dextroamphetamine in your system than the red blood cells can handle, then you're going to slowly accumulate a pool of inactive, so it's not causing dopamine release in the brain, it's not even getting into the brain, it's a pool of the inactive prodrug is building up in your blood, and those enzymes in the red blood cell are keeping going, keeping working. So once you've saturated as much as those red blood cells can process, then the amount of dextroamphetamine in your blood isn't going to get any higher. It's going into the brain, so that there's a ceiling level put on the maximal effect there. And again, if you've hit that maximal saturation of the red blood cell enzymes that are cleaving it, again, we're building up now a backlog of the prodrug, but that means once the enzymes have cleaved all the, they keep cleaving, and creating more, again, rather than peaking to a higher level, that means above a certain level, what the Vyvanse will be doing is delivering over a longer time than originally, because again, it's essentially you've created a new pool of this lysine-linked dextroamphetamine in the blood that can't be activated until there is available red blood cell enzymes to cleave it open. So with the Vyvanse, once you've reached the saturation level for your body, going higher on the drug, going higher on the dosage should have more of an impact on extending the duration of the effect rather than boosting the effect so high. So that's one example. Example number two, I'm going to talk about another stimulant. It's a form of it's a form of methylphenidate, a form of Ritalin-like compound named Jornay. Jornay came out a few years ago now, and it's unique in that it's the only stimulant which we take at nighttime to have its effects work the next day. So how does that happen? So Jornay has a patented technology. It's a capsule with little pills and little beads inside of it, and the beads have two different coatings, one they call an extended release and one a delayed release. So the extended release is closer to the core, the delayed release is outside of each little pellet. So at nighttime you swallow the outer capsule. Within the stomach, that outer capsule itself dissolves, dumps these beads into your stomach, and because of the cleverly patented coating on these beads, which is highly hydrophobic, so it's preventing water from even saturating or touching, and almost all biochemical reactions need to take place in a watery aqueous solution milieu, so not much is going on there. So the delayed release is both a pH dependent and hydrophobic components. So the external delayed release capsule isn't dissolving until about 8 to 10 hours into your system. So by now it's past your stomach, past most of your small intestine, and by the time that delayed system has been dissolved or goes away, then there's an inner extended release system, and by this time the methylphenidate that's being released is being released largely into your colon, and the colon, lots of digestion, proteins, other things are digested in the small intestine. The big intestine, the colon, is mostly good at absorbing water. It's not so good, so it's limited for absorbing methylphenidate, but methylphenidate is being released at a extended release rate through the colon. The methylphenidate again gets into your body, into your blood, absorbed from the gastrointestinal system into your bloodstream, from your bloodstream into your brain, from your brain the methylphenidate again binds or interacts with dopaminergic, noradrenergic systems in your brain to release existing supplies of those neurochemicals. The rate-limiting step here in this Jornay process is the capacity of the colon to absorb the drug as it's being released there. So again, similarly to what I was talking about with Vyvanse, as more and more of these tiny beads, again, both the delayed release outer shell is completely gone now, the extended release shell is allowing release of the methylphenidate, but if it can't get into the body through the bloodstream, if it isn't being absorbed, because the colon has limited capacity, then it travels further and further down the colon until more of it does get absorbed. So again, the rate-limiting step here is absorption from the colon into the blood. And again, similarly with, as I was talking about with Vyvanse, up to, as long as you are below the limiting capacity of the absorption from the colon, as long as you are not maxing out that rate-limiting step, then taking more Jornay will give you higher blood levels eventually in your body. But once you've reached that capacity for the initial parts of the colon, then more can't be absorbed faster. It's getting delayed and absorbed later rather than faster, which extends the duration of the action. And the Iron Shore, the company that makes Jornay, does have some evidence about this. So again, a way to extend the life of Jornay without, for most individuals, peaking at a substantially higher level is just taking more. Again, with most of our drugs, taking more, you will have more of an effect. We're not dealing with or interacting with the rate-limiting step there. So jumping out of this concept applies to dietary effects. So I've seen lots of online recommendations, separate from whether depression itself has anything to do with the deficit of serotonin. Let's just pretend you would want to boost serotonin levels in your blood. So serotonin is made from an essential amino acid. We need to have tryptophan. Our bodies don't make tryptophan. Other animals can, but humans can't. So we need to get tryptophan from our diet. Tryptophan in 2 steps. Tryptophan becomes 5-hydroxytryptophan, and then the second step is 5-hydroxy. Chemical step is 5-hydroxytryptamine. 5-hydroxytryptamine is serotonin. It's just another name for it. So the claim is, just take more tryptophan and you will boost serotonin levels in your brain and you'll be happier. Again, separate. I'm not going to get into the oversimplification of low serotonin is clearly not the simplistic cause for depression. But even if you wanted to boost it, this again is a multi-step system. So you have absorption from your digestive system into your bloodstream. You have travel from your bloodstream into your brain. So then we have a blood-brain barrier, which will come up importantly because that is the rate-limiting step here. And then it's within the brain that the enzyme converts the tryptophan into 5-hydroxytryptophan and 5-hydroxytryptamine, which is the serotonin, which then can be utilized by cells, neurons using serotonin. So the rate-limiting step here, though, is actually the blood-brain barrier. So there's a barrier that prevents easy flow of larger molecules into the body, and amino acids are large enough to be considered larger molecules. There is a transporter system to get amino acids to actively pump them from the blood system into the brain. But the transport system that transports tryptophan also transports several other amino acids. So just taking protein-rich food, which is, or even turkey, rich in tryptophan, you are also getting a wealth of other competing amino acids, and actually some studies say you're actually slowing transport of tryptophan into the brain because there's more competition for that transporter system. Again, the transporter system is the rate-limiting step here. So taking more and more, sort of like in the doll assembly line, you are building up a bigger supply, backing up behind the face-sewing people. You have more legs and arms sewn on, you have a bigger pile and pile going that far, but you're not getting to the finished doll product. You're not getting the finished serotonin. So there's a host of claims. You eat this food, it'll do this for your brain. You eat that food, it'll do this to the brain. And unless this shortage, or unless the problem in your system, unless these are targeting the rate-limiting step, let's say you really did have a deficiency of coenzyme Q in your brain, unless taking more of that through your body is going to address the rate-limiting step, it's not going to have any impact on getting that into your increasing the amount of product in your brain or increasing the rate at which your body produces that product. So that's about all I have to say today on rate limiting steps, and I will be back in 2 weeks talking about gamma oscillations. That's all for today. Bye.